we have made it to our final speaker of this incredible two-day Empowerment and Policy Conference for 2022. And I cannot think of a more significant person to end this conference, to close us out, to wrap us up, to bring us home, to tell us what we need to know as it relates to equitable infrastructure. And so I have the special honor of introducing our final speaker of the day. This is someone that I know very, very well. I've had the pleasure of working with for almost 15 years in state government and in city government in the city of New Orleans. Mitch Landrieu is Senior Advisor to the President and Infrastructure Implementation Coordinator. Mr. Landrieu served as the 61st mayor of New Orleans from 2010 to 2018. When he took office, the city was still recovering from Hurricane Katrina and in the midst of the BP oil spill. Under Landrieu's leadership, New Orleans is widely recognized as one of the nation's great comeback stories. In 2015, he was named Public Official of the Year by Governing Magazine. And in 2016, he was voted America's top turnaround mayor in a Politico survey of mayors. He also served as president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And we just finished an incredible conversation with Mayor LaToya Cantrell, Mayor Sharon Weston Broome, and Mayor Jeff Hall, representing New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Alexandria, respectively. So we know the power of mayors. We know how significant they are, the officials that run cities and are closest to the people across this country. Landrieu gained national prominence for his powerful decision to take down 4 Confederate monuments in New Orleans, which also earned him the prestigious John F. Kennedy Profile and Courage Award. In his book, In the Shadow of Statues, A White Southerner Confronts History, Landrieu recounts his personal journey confronting the issue of race and institutional racism that still plagues America. In 2018, he launched E Pluribus Unum, an initiative in the South created to fulfill America's promise of justice and opportunity for all, by breaking down the barriers that divide us by race and by class. Prior to serving as mayor, Landrieu served 2 terms as lieutenant governor and 16 years in the state legislature. And I got to go back to the first panel of this day, which was a panel of legislators and members of the Louisiana Legislative Black Caucus. Amazing work that legislators do. He and his lovely wife, Cheryl, live in New Orleans, where they raised their 5 children. Mayor Landrieu, welcome to the Urban League of Louisiana's 2022 Empowerment and Policy Conference. So good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Judy Reese-Morris. That was a really kind introduction, none of which would have been possible without you and all the folks that you brought together to help me, help the people of the state respond to Katrina and Rita and Ike and Gustav and the national recession and the BP oil spill and building back New Orleans, you know, the city that both you and I love during one of the most difficult times in our history. So it's great to see you. I hope the people of Louisiana understand how incredibly fortunate they are to have you leading the Louisiana chapter of the Urban League in partnership with my friend and buddy, Mayor Mark Morial. I always call him Mayor. I know he's the president and the CEO of the National Urban League. I understand from your introduction that you had Mayor Cantrell and Mayor Broome, who I was with yesterday, by the way, in Washington, D.C., Mayor Hall of Alexandria. And of course, I'm in constant touch with the members of the Legislative Black Caucus and really look forward to seeing them again and working with them. And then, of course, the Executive Vice President, Chief Operating Officer of the National Urban League is I used to call him Lil Don, because I served with his daddy before I served with him. They both hail from the Opelousas area and the Sunset area, where, by the way, the vice president is going to visit on Monday to introduce and announce a fairly significant broadband or access to high-speed internet for folks that live in rural communities. So I knew him very, very well, and I love him. And of course, my great friend, Bill Bynum, who helped us rebuild the city of New Orleans, Dr. Andre Perry, who was born and lived in, or at least lived uptown in New Orleans, not far from where I live right now. And then finally, Angela Glover Blackwell, who is one of my favorite people in the entire world. who helps us really understand how you think about equity, how through PolicyLink you design programs that actually drive equity in a sustainable way. And finally, Judy, you probably did not tell these folks this, but you were the one who came to me when I was mayor and said, look, we got to put our money where our mouth is. We've got to make sure that our government works, and we're going to build an equity agenda and an equity budget in the city of New Orleans. And so I thank you for that. I know you know as much about this as I do and anybody else in the country. And so everybody is well served. And I'm so sorry that I can't be with you in person. I would love to be hugging on all of y'all on St. Patrick's Day. So top of the morning to all the Irish folks. I don't have 1 ounce of Irish blood, but I'm acting Irish today. So thank you for having me. I'm thrilled, obviously, to represent President Biden. I'm sitting right now in the executive office building about 100 yards away from the Oval Office. And the president has tasked me with trying to organize this once in a generation opportunity to take this money that is designed to lift people up and to give them a chance to build generational wealth and to have access to the things that are so critically important for them in their lives. This truly is the largest piece of legislation that I have been aware of in my life. Now, I can't see everybody in that room, but I don't think anybody in there is older than Eisenhower. But this is actually the biggest thing that's happened since the New Deal, which was way back in the day. And this money, it's $1.2 trillion. That's a lot. It's hard to count up to the trillions, but let's just say that's a bucket load of money. And its intent is to literally rebuild America. When the president was elected, he said, if you give me the power, I'm going to use my power to unite America, to lift us up, not tear us apart, and to build us up, not tear us down. And essentially, that's what he did. He brought Republicans and Democrats together. They actually passed this bill, and now we are in the process of turning his promise into a reality. So I want to talk to you just a little bit about it so you can be aware of what's in the bill. Half of this bill is money that's going to be invested in roads and bridges and airports and ports and water systems. We have a lot of that in the state of Louisiana, but they have a lot of that stuff all over the country too. And most of that money is going to be spent through the Department of Transportation and Development. It's going to come down to the state through the governor, and it's going to be allocated by the governor and the state legislators to communities throughout the state of Louisiana as it relates to our state, although I'm head of the whole thing nationally. The other half of the money is money that's going to go to other departments that are designed to make sure that everybody in the country has access to high-speed internet. Everybody knows, having lived through COVID, how critically important that is for people not only to survive, but people to thrive. And that's true whether you're sitting in the Delta, whether you're sitting in the lower Ninth Ward, or whether you live uptown, whether you live in the middle of Baton Rouge, whether you live in Tallulah, whether you live in Shreveport, Bossier City, or whether you're over in Jena, Louisiana. As the president likes to say, you know, gone are the days when a child should have to sit in the back of their car with the mama in the front outside of McDonald's so the child can do their homework. Farmers need access to it so that they can actually do precision farming. Seniors need it so they can have telehealth medicine. I mean, it's critically important. The other thing that's going to come down through the EPA is money for clean air and clean water, especially in Louisiana. And of course, all over the country, we have a huge amount of lead pipes that take water. They infuse lead in them. Our kids drink them and eat them. Their brains are atrophied over time. There are all kinds of negative effects for that, but there's a huge amount of money coming through general pipelines to the state to clean up water, to clean up land, also to clean up what they call orphan wells. These are gas wells that were drilled by oil and gas companies that got left behind that actually dirty the aquifers and actually poison neighborhoods, or abandoned mine lands. There are lakes and rivers, for example, like Lake Pontchartrain, that over time has gotten dirty, that we're putting a lot of money into to clean up so people can enjoy themselves and recreate. And then, of course, there's a whole host of other money to really begin to what we call electrify the economy. Everybody knows that we're moving into a new way of generating energy, and we have to do that in a thoughtful and sustainable way. And then finally, everybody in Louisiana certainly knows the impact that climate change has had on us. And as we build back, we want to build back in a sustainable, thoughtful way, understanding that the kinds of storms that are coming our way, the kinds of sea level rise that we have, the kinds of impact that the old energy system is having us is something that we have to fix. So the president has tasked me with trying to get this money down to the ground. Now, this money is going to come to the state of Louisiana, particularly in two ways. One is through formula funding, and the other is through competitive grants. So right now, your state of Louisiana actually has a $3 billion surplus. Now, I got to the legislature in 1988. We had a $1 billion deficit, which meant that we couldn't make payroll the next week. Things have changed very dramatically. And because of President Biden, because of the American Recovery Act through COVID, and because of the infrastructure bill, your legislature today, and they just started the other day, is sitting on a $3 billion pocket of cash that ought to be spent in a very, very thoughtful way that's consistent with the president's vision for making sure that we lift up America and invest in people who have been left out. So it is really critically important as we start thinking about how this money gets down to the ground, how it gets spent and who it gets spent on is critically important, which brings us to the issue of the day. What does equitable infrastructure look like? Well, I told you that the president wants to rebuild roads and bridges and airports and ports. And if you're from Louisiana, you know what a pain in the patootie it is to be riding on our highways, to be stuck in traffic, to be sucking, exhaust coming out of buses that don't show up on time, to be hitting potholes all of the time. If you've tried to cross the Mississippi River Bridge in Baton Rouge or in New Orleans, or you've been over Calcasieu, or you're running up and down I-49, or you hit 920, wherever you're riding, we can do better. And the same thing is true, of course, about what they call off-system bridges, which is where most people in Louisiana live, not just in the urban areas, but the rural areas as well. And so as we think about where this money is going to get spent, and if the money's going to the governors and the legislatures, you actually have to show up there and you have to go advocate for what is important and where it's important and make sure the legislators know what to do. The other half of this money is going to be competitive, which is to say that every governmental entity, whether it's a state, a city, whether it's a county, whether it's a town, whether it's a township, whether it's an airport, whether it's a port, you're going to be able to apply for this money. And the president has said very clearly to me and to everybody else, listen, when we spend this money, the lens that I want you all to think about basically is four things. One, I want to make sure that you think about climate. So when you build something back, don't build it back like it was. Build it back stronger, build it back better, build it back more sustainably so that when the bad stuff comes our way, the high wind, it doesn't blow everything over and that we can actually protect ourselves. And that would be true, as everybody knows in Louisiana, about the electrical grid too, because after a storm, you sat there without electricity for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. In Ida, I slept on the floor of my house without electricity, so I know exactly what it feels like. You understand that we've got to make sure that we build back stronger. All right. The second thing the president says, if you build back, make sure that people get paid a fair living wage. He thinks that the middle class built America. He thinks unions built the middle class. He wants to make sure basically that folks get paid a living wage, so that they can build generational wealth. The third thing he thinks about is making sure that we build stuff with things that are made in America so that all of us can go back to what we call manufacturing all over Louisiana. This is true across the country. We have these little towns that are hollowed out that have these little main streets that are gone. When I was lieutenant governor, we used to have a Main Street program to help them get back up on their feet. Really now what the president wants to do is return manufacturing to those small towns so that everybody can stand up. And with high-speed internet and access to it, folks can do business from anywhere. And the fourth thing that he talks about, which is the direct subject matter, but it's infused in everything that I've talked about, is he wants to build back with an equitable lens. He wants to make sure that money gets spent in places and on people so that nobody is left behind. And that's rural, urban, white, and black. And make sure that there is an intention to include everybody in the work that we're doing. So whether or not it's laying high-speed internet, whether or not it's getting rid of lead in lead pipes or PFAS in water, whether or not it's cleaning up waterways or abandoned mine lands or orphan wells, whether or not it's laying down a transit system, whether or not it's investing in a port or an airport. The question for the president is this money being spent? Are all the programs being organized in a way to make sure that nobody gets left behind? And not just in the sense of receiving the service, but also in the sense of growing minority-owned businesses. So the Office of Minority Business Development has been made permanent and it's been given a lot of money. And its mission, along with SBA and EDA, is to find minority-owned businesses and make sure they have access to capital so they can grow businesses and build generational wealth. Judy Reese-Morse knows this better than anybody else. If you design something a certain way, the outcome will be a certain thing. If you design it another way, the outcome will be something else. And one of the reasons why this country is so divided is because it's designed that way. The president wants to level that playing field and rewrite the ship of government and use his power and use this money to make sure that equity is the lens through which everything is seen. It's my job to make sure that the cabinet secretaries up here are working together, that they're working with the governors, that they're working with the mayors, and that they're working with you, the community leaders, and particularly the National Urban League and the state chapters, who have been unbelievable in their outreach to the community to make sure everybody hears, sees, and knows. There is a book that my team has produced. It's 441 pages long. It's not that hard to read. It can be found at build.gov. And we produced that book because we don't think that everybody should have to hire a lobbyist to know what federal funding is available. So I commend that book to you. We are also hosting infrastructure classes every Thursday, which you're welcome to. We've been working with the National Association of U.S. Conference of Mayors, the National Association of Counties, the National League of Cities, and of course, organizations like the Urban League to continue to talk to everybody who wants to hear that there are sources of funds available to actually lift communities up to find people where they are. And the incredible intent of this bill is to deal with unseen and underserved communities over time. It is one of the primary policy objectives of this legislation. And as I said when I started, it is a once in a generation opportunity to make sure that we get it right. So I encourage you to continue to work with us directly, but I also encourage you to go to your legislature and to your governor and talk to them and ask them what is their intent about what roads they're going to be rebuilt, what bridges they're going to rebuild, what water systems they're going to fix, where is the PFAS that they're going to take out of the water, where are the abandoned mine lands, where are the orphan wells, where are you going to lay high-speed internet? And finally, as we electrify the economy and more people start to buy electric cars, which is going to begin to happen, where are we putting electrical vehicle charging stations so that people in underserved communities can have access to what everybody else has? And then finally, what is your intent and how are you going to design the flow of these funds to build generational wealth communities that have been left behind? So that is the 40,000-foot view. I am thrilled to be here. The work that I've done in Louisiana prepared me for this job. I have a lot of partners and I have a lot of help, and I am heartened to know that the Urban League for the state of Louisiana is there to assist us in partnership with the National Urban League, all of the mayors, all of the legislators, and all of you. So God bless you all. Thank you so much. And Judy, it is, as always, great to see you again.
Thank you so much, Mitch Landrieu, for closing out our two-day Empowerment and Policy Conference. We could not have had a better way to close this out on our topic of equitable sustainability, building Louisiana's infrastructure beyond roads and bridges. So thank you so much again.